Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics, brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and today's guest is much different than usual. She's my friend and a talented natural sciences artist out of the Seattle area. It's Amanda Jorgenson. Thanks for coming on, Amanda.
Thank you very much.
Was it weird hearing me be all officious like that?
Yeah, your voice just changed again. It went to super, from super professional and almost a little deeper to back to your normal voice.
Yeah, I'm just a magician like that. I actually expected you to start laughing as soon as I said, yo, everybody.
I managed to restrain myself. It's probably for the best.
It's probably for the best. Okay, so for listeners, Amanda has nothing to do with comics, but she is an artist, and she's somebody I want to talk to for very specific reasons. This week, Amanda, just as an FYI, this week I'm doing all kind of coronavirus-related podcasts where I'm talking to people about, how they can help comic shops, how artists can set up and make money when conventions are not going on, et cetera, et cetera. There's you will be my sixth podcast in 6 days. So congratulations. You are bringing up the end. So we have to finish strong. But Amanda's here to talk about her art and how artists have been affected by all this, amongst other things. But I want to start with an origin story of a sort because, as I said in the intro, Amanda is my actual friend. We've been friends since high school, and I've known her for more than half of my life. Perhaps unfortunately for her, perhaps unfortunately for me, who can really tell? So, Amanda, I now want to give you a chance to do something that will bring you great joy.
Oh.
How did we first become friends?
It was a really, really, really crazy moment in sophomore year English. So
Wasn't that crazy?
Well, I mean, it got really heated in a very strange way.
See, I disagree with this. I feel like your story is full of holes, but I'm going to let you tell it before I can poke it with holes.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, because you already started poking it before it even got said.
Just pre-poking.
All right. Well, you can always use a pre-poke before the...
Oh, that sounds bad. All right. Tell your story.
All right. So it was probably either 1999 or 2000. Not that that matters too much, but I do have a memory that likes to remember dates. And we had just finished reading Old Man and the Sea.
Mm.
And it came to a point where there was a sudden argument in class about why something was so important. And all of a sudden, I hear this yelling from the side of the classroom in which it was, "The fish got ate!" Multiple times in a row. Turns out it was David. David just yelling, and he was turning red, too. He was really gotten you upset.
Wow.
And it was, I just looked at you and I was like, yeah, I think because this is a very dramatic moment and pivotal moment in your life about the fish getting ate, not only are we talking about terrible grammar, but your passion towards Ernest Hemingway's Fish.
I do love Ernest Hemingway.
I think that was really, really the cincher for me.
So I just want to say that, I feel like your brain has definitely accelerated my intensity during that scene, because I feel like every time you've told that story, which is a lot, I have gotten more angry, and it's really funny because I remember getting slightly annoyed, but of course I was also the one who was doing it, so maybe my memory of it's jaded too. But I don't know about that. I will say, okay, and that's the thing though, is the part that you always say is you say that's how we became familiar with each other. How did that lead to us becoming friends? Honestly, I would have thought that you would have kept a great distance from me. You would have been socially distancing from me before the coronavirus.
I mean, normally, yes. However, I knew that there was something special.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who gets that upset about literature and can't even use appropriate grammar when getting upset about literature, there's something nice there.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And it is funny because I did say the fish got ate. That is the one consistent part of that story. And I honestly don't know why I said that to this day. It is incredible that I have made much of my side hustle career, it has been built off of speaking properly and actually writing properly. And I came from a foundation that apparently had no grasp of the English language.
Yeah, it was, I mean, even in, more recent history with our friendship, I think you've called me out for a couple blog posts I did. Like, grammar is not quite good there, and I was just like, okay, fish got ate. It's like really a catch-all term. It's like you can't start with me because
you got the trump card. Oh, trump card! I hate saying that now. It is, the funny thing about it is like, I don't know. I always think it's really interesting how, of all people, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be friends or something like that, but do you ever think it's interesting how, like, the people that stay with you throughout your life, like, if in that moment I wouldn't have been like, I bet that girl who's really, really judging me over there is going to be my friend 20 years from now.
Oh, I mean, like, yeah, there's like judgment, but I remember very clearly, like, just laughing my face off, tears of happiness at that moment, because like the whole room just like went down into this like spirally pit of anger over something that happened to a fish.
Well, I mean, it was Ernest Hemingway. Clearly, we're all very passionate about that fish and the old man.
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't remember what happened to him.
You don't remember the book, but you remember this.
I mean,
it was a long time ago.
I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, that was 20 years ago. That was 20 years ago.
I think the real reason why we're still friends is you definitely diagnosed me as a person you could sass. And for listeners that don't know, which is all of you, Amanda's life is built around sass.
That's untrue.
Untrue. Whatever.
That's always been the fun part of getting together with you after, even multiple years go by. It's like we pick up in the same spot, and like you still do like these really, really incredibly stupid or amazing things that just need to be sassed.
Oh my God, stupid or amazing. That really is my spectrum.
Yeah, you really you're more of a binary kind of individual in that sense.
I appreciate that. Okay, well, let's talk about you, because I want to talk about your art. So, and we can jump back into any of our high school escapades or our later life escapades if you'd like at any time. But I want to talk about your art because Amanda is an excellent natural sciences artist. She is incredible at corvids. She's incredible at birds of all varieties. She did an incredible commission for my wife for her birthday, in which that she drew both of our cats with a background that looked like a Mark Rothko, and we called it Rothcat, which is spectacular. And I will share all this on the internets. But I want to talk about that because, when you were going to college, you went for something completely different. You went for, was it German literature?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did a bachelor's degree in German language and literatures, and I even followed that up with a master's degree in German language and literature.
So you were committed.
Oh, I was all in. I even taught German language for almost a solid decade, until I burnt out in a blaze of glory.
But what a blaze of glory it was.
It really was. And it ultimately came down to my mom found an artist who was showing some pieces of work at her library in Vancouver, Washington. And she asked the artist where she learned how to draw like that. I was like, all natural science, illustration, just all sorts of really elaborate pieces of work depicting the natural world. And she'd said, oh, I went to the University of Washington Natural Science Illustration Certificate Program. And she sent that information to me. And I was like, aha, this is my ticket out of academia. And I'm going to go for it. And I went for it. And at that point, I hadn't drawn in several years. I kind of left that I don't know. I let that talent die a little bit, if you will.
Weren't you famous at being excellent at drawing in MS Paint?
Oh, you're not wrong. That is one thing I did do every year. I did draw my Christmas cards in MS Paint.
Yeah.
And they were beautiful pixelations of, well, birds.
It was a precursor.
It was. And you know how much I love birds.
Yeah. I mean, birds are the best, besides cats. It's number one, number two.
Well, I mean, like, foes.
Yes, exactly. They're foes, but they are both incredible animals. But so you had that program, you had that certificate program. At what, we were talking about before we started recording this. I think that one of the interesting things that people forget about is, like, let's say, so how old were you when you decided that you want to get out of academia?
whoa. Oh, gee, I just forgot how old I
Like
was.
28, 29?
No, I was going to be 32.
32. So I think one of the things that a lot of artists don't realize, or really anybody who works in any type of creative, is that like you get to a point where you're like, well, I'm too old to do this now. It's like I can't break in to this field because I've gotten to this point, or I'm so far behind my potential peers and everything like that. But you made that decision that you wanted to go down that path. So I guess what was it that appealed to you so much about going down that path and trying to pursue art as a potential profession?
And that's a really good question, of course. And I wouldn't, have it any other way coming out of your mouth.
Oh, the fish got ate, Amanda. The fish got ate.
No, but honestly, what like made me think about this more was not only knowing about the program that I was talking about, but I found a note to myself from an assignment I did in second grade. So this was 1992. Like the "what you want to be when you grow up" thing. You know what I'm talking about? I actually have.
I found mine recently. You know what mine said?
I want to be a comic book writer.
Comic book artist.
Damn. Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I did not. I ended up not being one, clearly, because I will say, unlike you, I was never good at art.
Oh.
So that was a problem.
Did you practice?
Yeah, I practiced a lot. I just continuously got worse. It's weird.
That's not true.
It is true, believe me. Anyways.
You have. Okay, sorry. All right, so this says, so I found it, and it's really cute because there's like a little mouse face in the A of Amanda. It's really, I'm such an adorable child. What happens? When I grow up, I want to be an artist, and I will make fancy pictures and make fancy posters. I will paint all different things, and most I will make pictures of snakes and sharks and whales and dolphins and wildlife pictures, and I would like to sell them to people. The end.
You absolutely nailed your future profession at a very young age. That's incredible.
So when I found that, so we were going through some old stuff in my parents' garage, and when I found that, I was just like, oh, damn. Yeah. All right, 8-year-old self, get your now we're going to make this happen. So it really was when I was 31, I was just like, I've always wanted to do this in earnest. I need to do something different with my life because academia, if anyone's ever been in it, like if dealing with the bureaucracy of it all, it gets very tedious, especially if you're doing liberal arts at a state school. And yeah, that kind of just like really pushed me. And it's like, either we're going to sink or swim. And because I like birds.
You're going to fly. Ooh, I like what you did there. Maybe you should have been a writer too, man. You know, I do want to say I love that 8-year-old Amanda used fancy multiple times in a sentence because I feel like you would do that now.
I don't know. Fancy?
What's wrong with fancy? That sounds like an Amanda-ism. I like it.
Okay.
I say fancy. But okay, so you got it. You went through that program and I mean, honestly, like day one, you were talented. It was obvious. You're very good at what you do. But you originally, I remember we went to Emerald City Comic Con one year. And you walk with me because that's the thing that we do is we'll take a day and I'll walk around with you and you'll like lust over Copic markers and we'll look at some artists and yada, yada, yada. But at that point, you were considering a more like narrative based focus. You were thinking of being a children's book illustrator. So first off, why was that? And second off, why did you shift away from that?
So ultimately, I when I was first starting out, like in earnest again, like, so that was around 2016, I want to say, I wasn't convinced that you could, or people would be interested enough in natural science illustration or like fine art pertaining to natural sciences to want to purchase it. And so I thought the best way to go about it was to reach out to younger audiences and see, and then illustrate things like about, like this whimsical panda.
Oh, I already like that idea.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm not going to do it, but like, I just thought that was the best way to like showcase any like artistic talent opposed to doing what I actually really enjoy is like doing these really like, I'm not a photorealist, but like more realistic renderings of all sorts of things, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, it totally does. Because if you're doing more narrative based stuff, especially like children ones or children's books, that would take you down a completely different path because you have to give them life in a way that might not necessarily be to your liking. Because it's like, okay, so for listeners who would like to check out Amanda's site, was it amandamjorgenson.com?
Yeah, and that's an SON on
SON. Yeah, so you have that group of 5 different crows you did. And like they have names like, what is it? The Fixer, and then there's God, what is it? Is there an advisor?
There's the Fixer, the Advisor, the Scapegoat, the Accomplice, and then the Poorly Planned Murder.
Okay, yes. So those are awesome. My wife and I ordered those off of Amanda's site recently. But the thing is like what you do there is it's not photorealistic, but it is like the depth to it and like the texture to it and everything like that. Those are things you would have to lose in the pursuit of narrative storytelling for 2 reasons. First, it doesn't really fit children's books. And second off, I don't think you can really get to that level of detail because your pieces take a while, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like a piece like that takes anywhere between, 6 and 10 hours.
Mm-hmm. So it's like if you're spending 6 to 10 hours on one crow on a page, that is a misappropriation of time.
Correct. No, and I totally agree with that. I mean, that's something that I was absolutely realizing too. I went out to New York City for the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators Conference, and I kind of realized there too, like, you have to deal with this might sound wrong. You have to deal with a lot of people telling you how to make your art, and that's just something that I don't know that I am or will be willing to put up with in the long term. So like, I'm happy for feedback, but I don't want to have to adapt my style to appease the masses, let's say.
Well, and I also think that in 2020, in a time, well, I mean, when we're not like quarantined and things like that, given what we're able to do with the internet, given the diverse interests, given things like Facebook groups and birding empires and Audubon societies and things like that, I think that there's really a place for art of all different varieties. It's just you have to find your audience and you have to find a way to deliver it to them. And I imagine that's been a big part of your process the last few years is not just trying to develop your voice as an artist, but also trying to find a way to get that out to them. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's been, I would say the last 2 years have been really quite beneficial for me because I've, not only hustled, but I've found a lot of really cool organizations here in Seattle, like a lot of pop-up markets that just kind of put you out there and like talk to different audiences in different areas of town. And like realizing that, people, and I don't know if this is, regional specific, but like here in Seattle, people love all their wildlife stuff. Like they're like, hey, this is pretty badass. Why don't you draw me? What did I draw? That was like so bizarre to me. Oh, well, it was probably a lot of things, but I can't think of it anymore. But I was just like, it was like
was it Rothcat?
No, but that was so beautiful. That was actually that was the last painting I did of 2019. And what a way to go out, I say.
Yeah, you did a hell of a job.
But like, just like realizing that there is an audience for you, I think was very encouraging because for a long time I was just like, oh, well, no one's seeing my stuff. And like, oh, maybe they think it's boring to see like, like for the crow art, like just have, this very sterile white background and just have like the details on the bird. But people really enjoy that. Like, and it's really nice to see too. But it does take a while. Like you just have to like, a lot of it, like, and I think some other folks in my cohort didn't really take this to heart, is like, you have to put yourself out there and like, even like send out not necessarily cold calls, because who does that anymore? Maybe you in marketing. But,
I do not.
But like emails and stuff, and just be like, hey, I'm an artist who focuses on natural sciences. Would you be potentially interested in using some of my art or a style of my art in like beer labels or even for posters for shows or cover art on music albums? Like there's so many places that you can put your art that I don't think a lot of people think of. So finding those opportunities have really been beneficial.
Do you think that people would be surprised by how much of being a professional artist is really the hustle?
Yes. It's yeah, it's absurd sometimes, like how long I can dig around on the internet and be like, this might be a good business for me to reach out to see if, they're interested in potentially not just like showing my art or use, like I said, using my art for like one of their products, or even, and then you always have to deal with that rejection, like, too, that's inevitably coming. And for a lot of people, and I'm sure this is across all creative fields, it's like you're going to get that feedback that it's just not for them, and it's a blow to your ego. But you just gotta, what is it? What is that? Pick yourself up?
Yeah, I don't know. Pick yourself up and dust yourself off. I don't know.
Oh, isn't that a song?
Maybe.
You used to listen to all like the girl power songs.
I listen to female empowerment music when I run.
Yeah, but otherwise you do too, right?
I'm actually mostly I'm just like an old person who listens to classical music and movie scores at this point because it's hard to work doing other things. But yeah, I mean, I think college, I was more like the pop punk era where I was listening to like screamo and pop punk. And then I got into my indie stuff. I don't think I really ever had like a girl pop era, although I did make breakfast the other day while listening to Britney Spears and Amber was about to shoot me.
What? Okay, well, no, I remember very specifically having a phone call with you at some point when we were doing like one of our 4-year catch-ups.
Oh, whatever. That was during the aughts. We've been much more in touch lately.
I'll give you that. It's very true. I was probably somewhere in Europe.
Yes, probably. But anyways, you remember me listening to, what is it?
You were in love with Kelly Clarkson music.
Oh, I mean, Kelly Clarkson, like, Since You've Been Gone is like an absolute jam. That is on my run mix to this day.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you were quoting it to me, though.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's really just Since You've Been Gone. I honestly don't know if I listened to a single other Kelly Clarkson song. I have to admit, most of my female empowerment music stuff is just singles. Like, I really love Roar by Katy Perry to run to.
Well, I mean, that makes sense.
Very inspiring. Very inspiring. But so when it comes to the hustle stuff, though, I think that's interesting because that's something, like you said, every creative field has to do that. You have to reach out to people. You have to go to these events and try to like build peer groups. You have to try to build contacts for people you can sell to. You have to put up shops. You have to put up stores. You have to make personal contact. The thing that you think about that and you're like, pragmatically, I know how to do that theoretically. But is that something that required something in your personality that you might not have realized you had before?
Yeah. When I was a German instructor, like I always felt confident in what I was like teaching and all that. And so I could stand up in front of a group of people and just kind of be like, hey, this is what we got going on. When it turned to art, it was, I felt like a fraud initially.
Sure.
Or an imposter, like the whole imposter syndrome, because like
totally real. It's totally real.
It is. Like, I was like, who am I to be standing here with a booth of prints and trying to sell it to people or trying to talk to people about art, because I've not been doing this my whole life. I haven't gone to art school, things as such. And like, just trying to kind of tap into my own confidence. Like, yeah, I may not have done those things, but I effing know how to draw.
Yeah.
So they're like, just like, building myself from the inside out, I guess, like just being like, hey, you know how to do this stuff. You know how to do it better than, say, someone else, like named David Harper or something. But
damn, I have you on my podcast and you endlessly sass me. What else should I have expected?
No, surprise, surprise. So yeah, I mean, like just like not shying away from like talking to someone like, hey, what's your technique? It's really, I have observed other people like at tabling events and like boothing events that just don't interact with anyone who comes and looks at their stuff. And like the thing that you have to do is like, even if you're an introvert, you got to be extroverted for that time period, because otherwise no one's going to be interested. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. I think a lot of times too, it's like, so I've talked to people who table at conventions and I've brought this up before, but it's like so let's say Emerald City Comic Con and you have a table, like there are people every year who will come to that same event and they'll ask, what do you have that's new? And that's two things. One, they want new things. And two, they're invested in you, not just the art. And like, they trust that they will like your art. So it's like building those connections through conversation builds that long-term investment where people will keep looking to see, oh, she's got a new set of crow prints. Like, I'm going to buy those. I imagine that's a huge part of trying to like build those inroads.
Absolutely. Like there's someone who keeps coming back for more and more owls that I keep drawing. It's like, oh, email me when you have your next owl out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that works for me.
Maybe if you actually would do a real bird of prey, like a peregrine falcon, I would actually be buying more stuff off you, but you keep bringing all these corvids and owls. I mean, come on now. What is their diving speed even? Peregrine falcons have the fastest diving speed of any bird. It's incredible.
What do you keep calling it? The goat?
The goat, greatest of all time. Greatest bird of all time. G-boat.
Shamefully, I had to look that up when you wrote it to me in a text message because I had no idea what you were talking about.
Maybe you are older than me secretly.
Well, I'm just not. I mean,
I'm kidding.
You're not wrong.
I'm an internet person. I have to know these things.
Yes, you do things on the blogs.
On the Twitter sphere. So speaking of the birds, though, you went the natural sciences route because childhood Amanda demanded it. Her and her fancy ways.
We call her Demanda.
Okay, Demanda demanded it. Why did you have this bird focus and you have this natural sciences lean? How did you decide that?
Well, animals have always been super badass. Any point in my life. So I spent some formative years up in a bush village north of Alaska. So if you're familiar with Nome, I know you might be.
I've been to Nome.
Yeah. So I spent almost 4 years in a small native village called Breivik Mission, where basically most of the entertainment came from wildlife around there. And my first formative drawing experiences and lessons actually came from the native carvers and artists. And they would always tell me like all these really cool stories that went behind their art and about the animal. Mm-hmm. And so I always just thought that was always the neatest thing is like, there's so much more to an animal than you can see from its exterior.
Yeah.
And so that's something I've always carried. But then my parents really encouraged the whole like being interested in nature and sciences and stuff. And they gave me Ranger Rick, which is a really badass magazine for kids. I don't know if it's still around.
I don't know if it is. I'm interested to know. I'm gonna Google it.
But I remember just sitting down and just drawing, like trying to draw from the pictures in there. And they saw like, hey, she's actually got some talent. Why don't we just like let her do this? And so they did sign me up for some drawing lessons when we moved to Chicago, or just like a Saturday drawing group. But like they really encouraged that. But animals, they're just so complex. Like you really need to know how they move. So when I'm drawing a certain animal, I tend to watch YouTube videos if I can't get it in real life. Mm-hmm. Or what is it? IRL.
You don't have to try to speak internet. It's just going to be weird. So that I can see how they move, because I think that's also really important when you're capturing something, and even in still, just so that you know, like, hey, that feather would be placed there, or that limb couldn't go that way because an animal wouldn't get up that way. And then the most important part is, of course, like depicting the life in the eyes and all that, because that's really important, because there's so many people out there who are like, the eyes, blah blah, like the fur is what matters. What? I mean, honestly, like that's a really interesting like divide to me, because you can have something that looks real but doesn't have life to it, and to me it would be kind of a loss. I'm not saying that those people are like failures or something like that, but at the same time, I really agree with you. I feel like the life and kind of, I'm going to use a fancy term. I learned this when I was like a kid, and ever since then I've been obsessed with this word, verisimilitude. Do you know what that word means?
No.
It means the appearance of truth. And it's like, or like in your case, like verisimilitude in art means like basically you have accomplished the authenticity of that animal, of like the real feeling of it. Of, if you want to be dramatic, the soul of it, because you've brought the eyes to authentic life. And I feel like if you can put all the time you want into feathers or into fur or whatever you want, and if you don't have like something that brings that animal to life, I feel like it loses a lot.
Absolutely. And that's I mean, like, I don't know why I was just thinking this. I was like thinking about zombies. It was like they look,
Natural transition.
they look real, but they're dead inside.
Totally.
That's one of the first things I learned in Breivik Mission too. Is like the story will be in the picture. The eyes will tell you everything, and it's like really cool for me to remember because like I was really young when I was there. But like that's something I've definitely carried along with my art is like you have to have something there that tells a story. Otherwise, it's just ink on paper.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's funny. I just want to say really quick. I never knew you lived in Breivik Mission.
What?
Yeah, I didn't even know you lived in Chicago.
Oh shoot, we bounced around. I tell you that much.
Yeah, your life began when the fish got ate in my mind.
Let me tell you, the year was 1984.
My word, my word. But no, I really think you're totally right. I love the comment you made about how it's just ink on paper because I really love the perspective of the makers in Breivik Mission, and a lot of that. I feel like a lot of Alaska Native culture looks at animals in a completely different and perhaps much more soulful way. It's like they approach it in a deeper way. But all right, so I just have a couple more things. I want to jump into the Seattle situation first. So I've always wanted to ask you about this because I think it's awesome. You would post things on your Instagram where you go to these makers markets and art shows and stuff like that, and it would have the names of all the artists. And you would like often be on the top line. I remember one time I made a comment about you being a headliner. Are you a headliner? Or is that alphabetical order? Please tell me it's a headliner.
Oh my god! Like, I'm probably a headliner. You know what? Let's just give my ego a boost. I'll say I'm a headliner. I'm Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act. I'll tell you that much.
Hell yeah! I don't even know why that makes sense, but I support it. Hallelujah!
It makes sense because I think it was the end of Sister Act 2. One of the students is like, "Yo, Sister Mary Frances, we didn't know you were a Vegas showgirl," and she's like, "I wasn't a showgirl. I was a headliner." Something like that.
I get tired of all the Sister Act 2 references on this podcast. You really had to come with that weak stuff. There's so many Sister Act 2 references on here. That does not happen. I'm just kidding. All right.
Oh, I thought you were being
No.
Anyway.
Last pre-coronavirus question. I want to. Okay, so you've been to Emerald City with me 3 times, twice.
I think it's
twice at least. We were going to go this year. So you walked the floor with me. You've visited a lot of artists, and I always love seeing who you wander to and who you don't. I want to get your perspective. Do comic conventions feel significantly different than the makers market? I mean, besides size, obviously, than the makers markets and art shows that you go to. Is it a different vibe, or like what's your thoughts on comic conventions as an outsider and as an artist?
You know, honestly, it's interesting that you brought this up because I've been thinking about it a lot. The Comic-Con seems like that one seems more inclusive. Like it seems no matter what kind of style of art you have, but if it's like still pertaining to like a general theme or whatever, you can show there. Like you can sell your stuff there. Whereas a couple of makers markets around here, I find that they're heavily curated and they're looking for a specific style. Like I think it's getting a little too.
That sucks. I'm just going to say, I'm sorry. Like, it seems weird to have a maker's market and then narrow it down to one thing, because then, like, isn't the point of going to a maker's market to, like, find, like, things you might like rather than a very narrow box that everyone, I don't know. It just seems counterintuitive to me.
It is. And, now that I have a lot of time to think, I agree. It's like, why are we so restrictive, or like, why is, the arts feel so restrictive on like what it is that they want to show to the public? And it gets frustrating. It's like, well, I'm sure if you saw my entire display, you'd be like, wow, this is great. And you never know who's going to show up to these events. You know, you get such a wide breadth of people. Is that the right word?
Yep.
I was just thinking of bread.
Bread is delicious.
We bought yeast. I think we got the last thing of yeast at the grocery store. But anyway, yeah, I mean, like yeah. So that's kind of what I got from it, is like, I think it's interesting walking with you there, because you definitely find people who are still doing kind of natural sciencey stuff, or like things pertaining to animals. And they just seem more open and welcoming, opposed to like other makers markets that I've been to where it's like, hey, don't step on our toes.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets a little sad, because like being an artist in Seattle is hard enough as it is already, just with the cost of things. And like, but it doesn't need to be that competitive, I think.
No, I totally agree. And honestly, like, that's one of the things I really like about the comic community too, is, I mean, to toot your horn a little bit. If I remember correctly, so you were there when I interviewed Fiona Staples, who you had no idea who was, but is actually like one of the most popular artists in comics and one of the most successful artists in comics. And didn't you show off your art to her? You're like, oh, I'm an artist. And she's like, oh, let me see your stuff. And you're just like, okay. And I'm like, you are showing this to a very important person. And she was just happy that you're good at what you do.
Yeah, she does Archie, right?
She did one arc of Archie while she does Saga, that one book that you sent me a text of. And you're like, hey, this is that person we met. Yeah, she does that book.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I remember. I'm actually really surprised that I did that, because like I think back, and I don't know if this is true of other artists, but when I think back of my art, like from 3 to 4 years ago, I'm just cringing inside. I'm just like, oh, that was so bad.
Every artist is like that.
Well, if they're not, they should be, because if you're happy with all the stuff that you've created in the past, you're not progressing. That's what I say.
Well, I mean, I actually think that's the case for like everything, honestly. Like, you know, when I was 16 and screaming at a room full of peers about The Old Man and the Sea, I would hope that I've improved somewhat as an individual since then. TBD, unknown. But, you know, it's like you're always, I use the dumbest reference for this type of thing, but it's like, I always think of Mario Kart. You ever play Mario Kart?
Oh my God, I'm so terrible. I haven't gotten any better at that.
Well, not everyone improves at everything, but there's that, you know, when you play one level and you play it again and you ghost race yourself, like you race a ghost version of yourself. Are you familiar with this idea? No. I'm going to take that as a no. Anyways, well, there's like a ghost version where you can see, and it's like if you beat your time or if you lose to yourself, like that version goes by. I'm like, I always feel like I'm ghost racing myself. It's like, how can I be better than the previous version of David? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, that's what artists do. I mean, it's just like when you look back. What's that?
They should be doing it.
I think most do. And I think partially because like they hate their own art so much, like a year ago. I mean, honestly, like some people make such significant changes to their work so fast. I mean, I bet if you looked at something from a year ago, you'd be like picking it apart.
Oh, every day.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, if you looked at Rothcat now, you probably would too. I'm like, why does Kubo so thick around the neck? Maybe that's a fair question. I'm just kidding. Kubo looks fantastic.
Oh my gosh. Went to my ass.
The paint adds 10 pounds. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
You don't wake up in the morning, you know why.
Oh my God. That's a threat. And now, a quick word from our sponsor. I want to take a quick second to give a shout out to my friends at TKO Studios. TKO is a new comics publisher doing things a little differently, with each of their titles being binge released in trade paperback and 6-issue collector's box sets at the same time. Their second wave of comics dropped recently, including one of my comics of the year in Jeff Lemire and Gabriel Hernandez Walta's Sentient, Roxanne Gay and Ming Doyle's The Banks, and more, as well as gems from their first wave, like Garth Ennis and Steve Epting's remarkable war story, Sarah. Each is available now at tkopresents.com in trade, single-issue box sets, and digital release. Want to check these comics out before you order? Well, I have great news for you. If you visit tkopresents.com, you can read the first issues of each title for free right now. If you like what you read and you're a retailer, reach out directly to them at sales@tkopresents.com or go to tkopresents.com/vendors to order. TKO offers a 50% order discount as well as free shipping in the United States, a deal that's pretty hard to beat. Just a reader? That's cool too. You can order whichever comics you like directly off their site as well. Visit tkopresents.com to learn more today. And now, back to the show. All right, let's talk about the situation, because I wanted to talk to you about the whole thing because, as listeners likely know, the world is in crisis. We're in a global pandemic, and Seattle, where Amanda lives, roughly speaking, was like the first hotbed of it. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I am really curious, like, what was it like to be in Seattle as it escalated there before anywhere else? Because I think it's interesting. Like, it's fascinating because you guys were probably taking it really seriously, and everyone else in the country was like, whatever. I mean, I remember talking to you about, will I go to Emerald City Comic Con a week before it happened, thinking that I might go. And now looking back on it, that idea seems insane.
Absolutely. Like, it's really wild to see. Like, I remember reading in, I think it was January, where the first case of coronavirus had been identified. And then, like, it just kind of, like, petered out. And then, like, you kind of heard more and more about it. And then suddenly, mid-March, it was just like, boom. Everything kind of just shut down immediately. And, of course, too late, but at least, there are actions being taken, but it's a little freaky.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is like a lot of people are realizing, and a lot of artists are supported by day jobs and work that they isn't their passion, but it's something that can help them pay the bills. And that's the thing is like, I don't think people think of art like, you look at an artist's website and they're like, oh, they must do well enough off of just like selling, whatever they sell to make a living. But a lot of times there's a lot more work that goes beyond that. How has this affected your life? Because I know like artists like you are reliant on shows. They can't be shows because there's no gathering. Are you guys at shelter in place yet?
Yeah, we, as of Monday.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say a date.
Oh, whatever. I mean, it's going up on, today is Thursday, March 26th. This is going up on Saturday, March 28th. And so I guess it was whatever, Monday something. Anyways, yeah. But the point is like, how has it affected your life as like an artist and just like a person?
Yeah, kind of like how you mentioned, most of us have day jobs. I have a day job as well in the spa and beauty industry, which supports my life here in Seattle for the half part. And so we were shut down the week prior to the shelter in place order. So I've been laid off, which is a little scary because Seattle is not exactly the most affordable place to be living as just a freelance artist. And especially if, you need to buy supplies to help maintain the other side of your income. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, that is in a whole is very strange. Like the studio where I work, or the spot which I work, I have a good deal of art up there for purchase, and people would come in off the street and buy things too. So like, of course, that additional income is not coming anymore, and no one's walking around seeing it, so no one's really interested in purchasing it in that way either. So like you said, like, while most artists hate, like myself especially, hate the whole thought of exposure, like you need it in order to make any headway in your art career. And right now, like, exposure is frowned upon, and social distancing, you can't have anybody out and about looking at your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, discoverability is really important. That's one thing I'm interested in is, obviously, not to go too deep into your life, but Amanda's significant other was out of country when this started, and because of that, Amanda was by herself with two cats, one cat, two. I'm sure absolutely wonderful cats, and that's a lot to take on. But I'm guessing that gave you a lot of time to think about how you're going to adjust to this period as an artist, because you have an online store, you have varying platforms you can work on. Has this changed kind of your focus as an artist have you gotten deeper into this and it's gotten more real?
Yeah, I'm really trying to figure out the like e-commerce, like online side of things, which it doesn't come naturally to me at all, just because I am a person who likes to be out talking to people about my art, which makes it then perhaps more interesting to purchase. Ultimately, seeing something on an online web store maybe doesn't make it as interesting because you don't get the whole backstory. You don't get to talk to me about it. You don't get to hear about my process necessarily. So I'm trying to figure out a way to kind of merge those two sides together. And I'm it's kind of a process in trying to figure out, okay, how do I make this more marketable now? Adding my really exciting, nice, personable side to it, as if you were meeting me in real life, but only online.
I have some ideas.
I know you do.
No, I mean, I actually just thought, I mean, have you put on your like, so one thing I think is really interesting is I mentioned like the awesome names you came up with for your Murder of Crows, your prints. Have you put the story behind the names on the prints on your e-commerce site?
So no, I only have the names on there.
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure out, like, would it be more interesting to have it in type? Would it be more interesting to have me saying it in a video? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think video for social, and I think that just having it like a passive thing where when you click on, let's say like the fixer, and you go on there and you're like this, story behind this, like the fixer is blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's because I actually spent time as a mob fixer for the Falcone family in New York City when I went to go visit them for the Society of Illustrators. It was a very brief time in my life, but I wanted to reflect upon that. I presume that was the story.
You're not wrong.
Oh, I'm not wrong. Impressive.
Although, Danny DeVito was involved somewhere there.
Oh, of course. Danny DeVito. What a treasure. He's telling people to stay inside. I love you, Danny DeVito. You're great. But I mean, it is that is one of the interesting things is like, how do you keep it personal when you can't have that contact?
Yeah, and that's it's really interesting for me to navigate as someone who is clearly not hip to the technology.
Ooh, yes, very very convincing right there. I don't know, but I mean, like to me, it seems like this is like a time for experimentation. I mean, like what's the worst that's going to happen if you just start throwing stuff out there and seeing what works?
Yeah. I mean, and that's it. I'm sitting here in 500 square feet of studio apartment. Fortunately, the significant other is doing other things. But it's just like, what's the worst that can happen? If I don't try it, then I won't know. And, it's something that I also think about when I'm painting. Like I go into these depths of like weird and amazing thoughts when I'm just like sitting painting a feather or something.
Do you kind of zone out during that?
Oh, yeah. It's like, okay, so Alex, my significant other, for those of you who don't know.
He's a very nice gentleman.
Yeah, he's all right. And, like, I hope
it was so natural. It was so natural. Wait, please. How do you feel about birds?
I like birds.
There we go. Perfect. All right, continue.
Oh yeah, he's always trying to convince me to like meditate because I don't know, he thinks I'm high strung or something. That's weird. But like ultimately for me, painting is meditation because anything could be going on around me. He could be talking at me, like there could be a cat vomiting on the floor or something, and I won't notice it until like I break away from that piece of art.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's 8 hours later. Not saying that's healthy. It's just what I do. Just definitely dive into something that keeps my mind off of the current state of the world.
Yeah. But okay, so I there was this thing that happened Emerald City Comic Con weekend that I thought was really cool. It was called the Very Very Shopping Network. Mm-hmm. And it was put together by a whole bunch of people, but the hosts were these two people named Jen Vaughn and Jaslyn Stone. And basically what they did was they did like a stream that was effectively QVC, but for artists. And it was really cool. Like they just went on there and they sold stuff and like they had links up to where you can buy the stuff and people could go on there and it could comment and participate and everything like that. And they were doing kind of just basically an at-home con. And honestly, like I kind of like there's part of me, obviously, like you don't have the buildup of like the network that they would have or something like that. But something like that where I saw there was this one artist who during Emerald City weekend, there was also hashtag ECCC online. I always get the C's wrong. But she like literally set up her entire con setup in her house and like took pictures of it and was like, what do you want? And like was using like Instagram and Twitter to like try to engage people in sales. And I don't know. I just think that there's a lot of really interesting ways you can approach these kinds of things.
And that's true. And it's really interesting to like, especially all the pop-up markets that I was supposed to be doing around this time. Like I've had 4 different ones cancel, and that hurts because that's a lot of revenue that you are not getting. But they're trying to do it online too, like to like stream on some sort of things too. And I'm really interested to see how this works because I unfortunately didn't know that they did that with the ECC.
I should have told you about it. I'm sorry. I'm trying to advise you all the time, and I'm like, oh wait, I forgot to tell you about multiple very useful things for you.
Yeah, well, no, and like that's the thing is like if I'm totally glad to be hearing things that people might know about that I have no idea about. Like, and I think that's the nice thing about having a community of people who are artists or people who just support artists and know about other areas. I think that's really necessary right now, especially when we're all stuck in our homes.
Yes. All right, I just have 2 more questions for you, Amanda. The one, I'm going to give you a quick platform. So for listeners that don't know, what kind of work do you have on your site, and what can like you do more than just like the prints and stuff? You do commissions too, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I have some original items on my website. Some of them are fine art. Some of them are more of the natural sciencey kind of side of things. So you get a lot of the pen and ink, black and white kind of prints. But I also have this series I'm really, really excited about still. I started it in May 2018, but it's the flora and fauna of the Pacific Northwest. Someone said it, I don't know, reminded them of some really famous artist, and I can't remember that really famous artist's name because I don't name drop.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. And I really like this because it that series in particular, and I'm still working on it to this day, because it like helps people realize what we have going on, especially in the Pacific Northwest, insofar as carnivores go. A lot of people don't know what a wolverine is, and I'm not talking the comic book figure.
I know what Wolverine is. He's badass. His name's Logan. He's 5'3". He was played by Hugh Jackman, who's not 5'3". It doesn't matter because he was still awesome. I know all about Wolverine.
How tall is he?
Hugh Jackman? I think he's like 6'1" or something like that.
Why is Wolverine so short?
Why is Wolverine so short?
I mean, like, I understand you don't have that choice in life, but like...
Well, I mean, they had a choice when they created him. I'm not really sure why they did. I imagine it was something to do with the fact that everyone else was kind of like traditional height, and this guy was supposed to be like a rabid brawler type dude, and so they're like, let's make him super small. The funny thing is he's like 5'3" and he weighs like 400 pounds because his like bones are like wrapped in adamantium, which is like a metal. And it turns out that if your bones are wrapped in metal, you're really heavy. So he's like, his BMI is like off the charts.
Can he jump then?
I mean, I think he's just gotten really strong. Like, I bet he has just like killer quads. He's shredded. His life is just basically doing squats 24/7.
Well, if you want to see a real Wolverine, head to my website. No offense to people who think that's a real Wolverine.
I mean, they're both real Wolverines. They're just different types of Wolverines. Anyways, but yes. And then you have like your corvids, who we've talked about quite a bit. Yes.
Yep. I've got my murder of crows. They're a lot of fun to draw. They're my local murder. I look at them out the window and I take my own reference photos of them. And so they are, they all look, I don't know. They don't all look the same, but they look the same.
Well, and I also love how you come up with unique solutions for your commissions when people come up with stuff. So, like, okay, what would you even say what was the Roth cap like painted on?
What was it painted on?
Well, I mean, it's got the wood base and all that jazz.
Okay, so for the Roth cats, I used a Baltic birch wooden panel that had been gessoed.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I can pretend to talk about artist stuff, but I have no idea what that. I don't even know what a gesso is.
Basically, it's like it's a surface that you want to put on any board, so it gives you more of a smooth tooth to paint on.
Okay.
And if someone disagrees with that, that's fine. I didn't go to art school.
But I mean, like your commissions, like it seems like you were asking me a bunch of different questions as we were going into it. And I loved the fact that you were fine tuning it so much based off of things that I was looking for, especially because I imagine a lot of people who commission you for stuff don't necessarily speak the language.
That's precisely right. Like I do try to ask a lot of questions up front so I kind of get a better idea of what people want. So it's not, a lot of edits to the final product and or the final painting and all that. And I really enjoy like trying to like get into people's heads to see what they're imagining and seeing if I can actually get that down on paper or panel or canvas or whatever. And and that's always the exciting part for me is like, can I replicate what you're actually thinking by asking all these like pointed and direct questions about what you think?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and like you were saying, it also saves you some work as you go along. Didn't you have to do some sort of edit to Kai, my cat? No?
Yes. In fact, I enjoy sending like when friends ask for commissions, it's really fun to send like updates every so often. I think I sent you a picture of him where he looked absolutely demonic.
Oh
like,
my God. Like the when you were in like the flat stage where you were putting down like the base colors, right?
Right. Yeah. He looked like, oh gosh, he looked like some sort of anime weird, like cutesy, heart nosed.
I mean, he kind of looks like that anyways, but at the same time, he was horrifying and it made me laugh hysterically.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure I still have that photo and you can gladly have it again if you need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But you always go through like that really bizarre teenage stage is like what I call it, and I'm sure other people do too. It's like where things are kind of making sense and coming together, but like your nose is still too big for the rest of your face. So like it's really funny sending and taking pictures of that time so that you can kind of see a progression of sketch to final product, and you get that weird middle stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, and for listeners, if you want to go and check out our site, I'm gonna have a link on the podcast and I'm gonna post it on Twitter and everything like that too. But for listeners of Off Panel, if you want to check out Amanda's stuff, if you want to buy something to support an artist who can use some support right now, you can get 20% off on her site by using the code Off Panel. Just throwing it out there if you want to check, and I'll have all that on the post as well. But Amanda, last question I have for you. Obviously, let's make a fairly safe assumption that we will get through this in some capacity. All of what we're going through now. I'm interested. What do you want for your art career going forward? Do you have an idea of what success looks like for you?
It's honestly like it's been amazing to see how much my small business has grown since I've started this out.
Yeah.
It's only been 4 years since I've really tried this out or have been doing this in earnest. And that's like my favorite word, evidently, right now. But seeing the growth that I've been able to make, like in it, like in people reaching out to me and asking for like even a pet commission or like the commission of their favorite bird, like to me, that already feels really good. Mm-hmm. And so I already find myself successul, if I'm allowed to say that. I don't know.
No, I mean, if you're allowed to say that, of course you're allowed to say that. I mean, the thing is like success can mean a lot of different things. Because I always think it's really funny when people ask, like, let's say somebody asked me, like, do you feel successful with my podcast and website? And it's like, could I make a living off of it? No, but it makes me happy that it makes other people happy. And it makes me happy that people like take something from what I do and that, it brings something to people's life. And just like, I bet you felt really good that when I sent you a picture of Amber looking extremely happy about Rothcat, getting something like that where you see the result of this work that you zoned out for hours on end about doing. I mean, like I bet you take a lot of joy out of just something like that.
Absolutely, and that's very true. I really like, and they're words, especially when it comes to like portraits of pets and whatnot, like of animals that have passed away onto the rainbow fields and stuff. I'm always really happy to get feedback from them, like hearing, hey, that you've captured the essence of my animal, and I want to thank you for it. It's going to be nice to look at it every day. Like, that's nice. Like, just getting any type of feedback, well, positive, preferably.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky so far that I haven't gotten a lot of negative feedback on my art, but I don't know.
Well, huh? I mean, honestly, it's like, I like what my ultimate point though is I think success means something different for everyone. And it's like, some people won't be happy unless they're, Mark Rothko and they're selling. Well, actually, the sad thing about Mark Rothko is regardless of how you stand, like all of his biggest selling art pieces were after he died. So it's like his pieces are selling for like $87 million and he's been dead for, I don't even know how long.
Yeah. See, this is the frustrating thing. Okay. So like this may be a side tangent, and I know
that's fine. That's fine.
But like, that is the really frustrating thing as a living artist. It's like, yes, these are considered masters of art. Yes, they are incredible. Like, they were, revolutionary to the art field at some point, and still are. However, like, should a piece of art be selling for that much money when they're dead?
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it's just like, when does an artwork stop being an artwork, but rather a status symbol? And I think we've gotten to that point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fundamental nature of capitalistic society is supply and demand. And the thing is like, Rothkos are not abundant and there's demand because people love flipping squares. Sorry. Remember, I'm the anti-Rothko guy. Give me a Jackson Pollock, though, and then we're cooking.
Yeah, there are two crows mating in the tree outside. Just want you to know.
Oh, thank you. You're also very quiet. Are you away from your microphone?
I said that kind of quietly because I didn't want to scandalize the cats.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's totally okay.
Yeah, but I mean, like, back to your original question, like, because I keep skirting around it, because I always get nervous about talking about success because something feels like inherently evil about wanting to be successful, which is absurd, but that's just me. I would like to be able to just do this full time. I would like to, because honestly, yeah, it sucks not to have my day job, but I've been really, really, really happy just sitting here and creating pieces for people who are, having a hard time going through like this really strange outbreak pandemic, It, like, that brings me absolute joy. Like, being able to do, like, your podcast and doing what you do, like, bringing joy to other people. Yeah, that's true for me too. It's like, I can sit here and make something that I know someone's going to hang on their wall and look at hopefully every day and be like, wow, that's pretty effing cool. Like, that is what I would like to have in my everyday life.
Yeah. You know what I just realized? I honestly, I was going to make a joke, but I do want to say I completely agree with all of that. Is like I said, success can look like a lot of different things. And for you, it's like, if you take joy out of bringing joy to other people's lives while being able to do that as your job. I mean, like, that's not everybody wants to make millions. Some people just want to, have a good life that makes them happy doing something that they care about. And I think that is a very, very honorable goal. And it's honestly, I wish more people were just like that, because we could use more people like that. But I do want to say that the fact that we have never discussed doing a Fish Got 8 commission is absolutely ludicrous to me. I can't believe it's actually animal related. There could be some sort of metaphor going on here. Just throwing it out there. Anyways, if you're interested in doing some work for me. But Amanda, that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about your art, to talk about all this situation, to talk about fish getting ate. And thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, kindest David, my friend of many years.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Off Panel with natural sciences artist Amanda Jorgenson. You can find her on our website at amandamjorgenson.com, where you can order her art and save 20% when you do with the code OFFPANEL. As a heads up, Off Panel is once again brought to you by Sketch.com. Check out the new version of the site and consider subscribing for access to all the site's content and its members only forum. If you're a fan of Off Panel, make sure to check it out on Patreon. If you back the show in there, you not only support it, but you get early access to each week's podcast, access to weekly content, and more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Off Panel on iTunes or Spotify and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by liking it on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD, follow on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or following me at @slicefriedgold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Charlie Chu, Greg Peterson, Stephen Hall, Dan Lee, Cameron Schrader, Pensacola Pop Comics, Kim Eslin, Philip Merrick, Christian Shelton, Kenny Porter, Chris Pachalo, Thorin Grunbeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Harry Sayer, Waltz Comics and Books, Carl Mazel, Danny Ollie, Paul Slates, Litwin Studios, Akil Wilson, Nathan House, Alex Dimitriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Troy Jeffrey Allen, Leona Kingus, Keegan Ray, Milton Lawson, Wesley Giff, Sean Kirkham, Harry Small, Alistair Ross, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Ryanwan, Connor Farner, Vita Yala, Aditya Bidikar, Tara Ferguson, Dave Slusher, WMQ Comics, Akil, Kokashi, Phil White, Sean Pinello, Ken Heidelman, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, Nick Michelin, David Kelly, Rob Wilson IV, Nick Polito, Owen McCready, Brendan Fletcher, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogert, Xavier Files, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Brody, Ira James Udaskin, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendricks, Steve Anderson, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Greg Rucka, Adam Highfield, Fiona Staples, Chris Hallrent, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonakos, Norbert Niccolo, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Off Panel's theme song just for the show. Check out their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in tomorrow for another episode.